Welcome back to the show. And you know what? It's always good and inspiring when you know that your people, your gang, your crew, your boys are watching you on television and they're encouraging you to keep going. Thank you so much, Solo, for this quote that you've sent in. You're saying that when you're small, they dismiss you. When you're growing, they criticize you. And when you're big, they fight you. Regardless, keep growing and keep thriving. Thank you so much for that. And let's continue with the show. Welcome to The Viewpoint. My name is Samuel Njoroge. We're just taking stock or looking into the political stories that have unraveled over the past 7 days and what exactly this means for the political space or spectrum moving forward. I'm still with governance expert Alex Manyasi. Thank you so much for your time and for keeping it Good Morning Kenya this far, Alex. Maybe we can revisit the whole issue of a rotational presidency. How then do we balance or do we get a solution towards communities that otherwise feel left out from the national cake, left out from having even a slight possibility at being president of this nation, Alex?
Yeah, so that will take, number one, that will take several routes. Route number one, of course, which is the longer route, will be that Kenyans will get to a point where they'll start focusing on issues and not necessarily on tribes and where you come from. I'm saying it's a longer route because Kenyans will take a while to actually get to a point where they can appreciate that. That's why today I like giving examples of Raphael Tuju, for example, when he was MP for Arieda. He did so well, and he was the best performing member of parliament at that time. But the people of Arieda voted him out just because he disagreed with Raila. So Kenyans are a bit far from getting to a point where they can look at personalities and issues and not focus on tribe. We have also seen the issue of the way national politics happens, even right now. If you look at the discussions are between Kikuyus, Luos, Luyas, Kalenjins, Kambas. Basically, that's where the discussion is. So the rest are supposed to be others. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not in that matrix in terms of tribe, then chances of you having even a discussion on the table is almost nil. Even though there are some candidates who are saying that tribe does not matter, trust me, even Mike Sonko himself, before he became governor of Nairobi, at some point he had to retreat and call Kambas to a discussion at Nairobi Club. Why he did that is because his bid was actually sliding away from him. So he needed Kambas to vote for him 100%, if not more than 90%, for him to be assured that the votes he was getting from others. And yet Mike Sonko was a very popular candidate in Nairobi on the ground at that time. But you see, the issue of tribe and bringing in the Secretary General Sifuna of ODM at that time, it was then, I mean, the tribe aspects and others were making it possible that someone else was going to take the Luyas and the Luos were going to be taken elsewhere, and then that was a threat to his candidature. So the aspect of tribe is going to take a while. The aspect of regions is going to take a while. There's also the aspect of whether these people are pastoralists or not, even though they do not make much significance to the national politics. So that's one. It will take a while for Kenyans to actually start thinking issues. And have said maybe we will, the current generation will grow into the space. The younger generation will grow into the space. Those ones who do not remember the history that Kenya has, such that the only interest they have is in someone explaining to them how they're going to get jobs and how they're going to improve their lives. Mm-hmm. And then that then can leave a lot out the older generation that is still uncomfortable. For example, there are people to date who will have a problem with a Luo being president. You see, that is unacceptable, and yet that's the reality. So the things I'm saying today, even politicians will not say them, or people in power will not say them, but it's the truth. And then, of course, we have another route, which is even worse, which is looking at, and that's what the president was actually trying to say. I'm saying which is worse because sometimes it can also create animosity. And what the president was saying was, look, other tribes, you can see these two communities have been having the cake for the last, I don't know how many years, 50 plus. It's about time that also someone else is considered or someone else takes the mantle. So that one, you don't have to change the law, you don't have to change the constitution. There's a time in Kenya, for example, there was the narrative of 40 against 1. So this can also be termed as a narrative of saying 40 against 2. So you see, that is also something that someone can approach from saying, we are fronting so and so, all of us are rallying behind that person. But unfortunately, this route requires, for example, what Raila Odinga did to Kibaki and say, so and so Tosha, and then other people rally behind that person. So it's a fairly complex situation we find in, but in terms of democracy and our constitution, if the big tribes will say that the small tribes will never rule Kenya, trust me, that will happen for another 1,000 years.
And there goes in the concern, because each and every scenario that you've pointed out, Alex, you've said that it's the truth. It points out to an unfortunate reality. How then do we strike a balance? How do we confront these truths that we're getting and facing to ensure that they do not threaten to tear the country apart?
So it's more about leadership. It's more about leadership than the voter. And I'm saying it's more about leadership than the voter because, for example, when Raila said Kibaki Tosha, the people abandoned Uhuru Kenyatta completely and voted for Kibaki 100%. Other tribes actually voted for him more than the Kikuyu community. So that is a confirmation that other tribes can actually rally behind a person even when their own tribe is either insignificant or is unwilling. So I'm saying leadership because if the leadership can find someone who makes sense, someone who is from a small tribe, someone who has no money, but someone who has the capacity to lead this country, then their selfish ambitions can be shelved for purposes of supporting that person. And this has been demonstrated before. Kibaki was never the best candidate at that time. And yet Kibaki, in terms of being, I'm saying the best candidate in terms of appeal and national appeal at that time. But if you look at the way Kibaki performed, the people who fronted him knew that he was a good guy who could lead this country. Maybe even in terms of financial muscle, he was not the most endowed. So it's possible that leaders can actually shelve their own ambitions and support a person. And that's why some of us usually have serious problems for people like Western Kenya, where you are producing more than one candidate and as if there's no candidate that's better than the other. Of course, it's possible to know that if you fronted so and so from this region and you put together your thoughts with another region or another candidate, then it's possible to produce a better combination. So a good idea plus a good idea should make a better idea. But usually the way the Kenyan elite think is that they rather have many good ideas who are not joined together, then you never have a better idea. So this is where the challenge is. It's about the, if you look at the cost, for example, they have now retreated and they are forming their own party. Why? It's because they just want to negotiate. If you look at Ukambani, it's almost everybody for themselves. It's not possible that Charity Ngilu wants to run, Kibwana wants to run, Machakos governor wants to run, then Kalonzo Musyoka is running. Surely, is it that everybody is good? It's not possible that everybody is equal to the other in terms of the capacity to lead the country. So the selfishness that we have witnessed in Kenya is just out of the leaders that we have. It's not out of Mwananchi. Mwananchi is always willing. The unfortunate bit that Mwananchi is swayed based on many other factors that are outside of governance. The unfortunate bit. And this is because if you think through the reasons why a voter wakes up at 5 a.m. to go vote, some of them will wake up at 5 a.m. because they were given something. And relatively, if you follow that person, probably if they are not given that something, then they will have slept hungry that day. What they do not remember is that for the next 5 years, you have compromised your capacity to ask hard questions to that mheshimiwa of yours. Now, for others, it's just about their waking up in the morning because they need to protect their vote and their man. So you see, those are not reasons that the voter should be having. But unfortunately, that is the reason that the voter has, because that is how they have been accustomed to think that leadership is. So that's why my argument should be that this reform and this ideological change should happen at the leadership level. And then in future, when we get to a point where the generations that are coming and the young generations are able to say, this is what is good for us and this is what is bad for us, and ask politicians the difficult questions, at least the leadership will have helped us to move from point 1 to point B.
Is that what the BBI is trying to cure? Is that what the BBI is trying to achieve?
So BBI is trying to achieve part of that. But you see, the way you look at it, accommodating many people is not necessarily equal to making representation possible. Because you see, if you're going to create 5 positions, it's possible to end up with the same 5 big tribes. Because it's about interests and it's about who is bringing what on the table. And that's why, like I was telling you, for example, in the coast, people are retreating to form their own party. Why are they retreating from their own party? Is because when they negotiate now, if among the 5 positions or 6 positions available, then they can negotiate for one of them. So what happens to the Turkana? What happens to the others that are small? And if you think through the process of getting someone at the negotiating table, it's always about the numbers. It's always about what you're bringing. That's why people like our court, they can make as much noise as politics.
Alex, we appear to have a hitch with your connection. Hopefully that will be resolved soon enough, but we're looking into the possibility of balancing the equation when it comes to clinching the top seat. There's been a conversation in the country that some communities have been accorded more opportunity than others. Others argue that courtesy of those opportunities, those communities have benefited otherwise unfairly as compared to counterparts within the same country. And that begs the question, how do we strike a balance and maintain the right cosmic balance, if I may call it so, when it comes to the running of the country? Remember, your voice and your opinion is much welcome on this show. Hashtag Good Morning Kenya at KBC Channel 1 and at Sam W. Njoroge. Let us know what you think about this. Let us know what your viewpoint is in as far as making sure that we balance the scale when it comes to politics, governance, and the running of government in the country. Alex, we're clear enough? You can hear me now? All right, perfect. So you were just making a point about whether or not the BBI will be in a position to cure these imbalances that have otherwise existed over time.
Yes, and I was saying that if you think through the positions being created at the higher levels, yes, of course, the antagonism is usually between the big tribes. And I'm saying antagonism because if you're Aukot, and I was giving the example of Dr. Aukot, for example, where will he get Turkanas to come and demonstrate in Nairobi? So he will never get them. And that's why it doesn't matter how good he is, he will always make noise and he will even be ignored and nobody will feel anything about it. So when you create more positions at that level, at the national level, at the higher level, then you make it possible to accommodate people who are likely to be antagonists and by extension tribes that are likely to be antagonists. And therefore you have a better, so to speak, a more cohesive country. But you see, I was making the argument that that does not cure the fact that representation means that everybody has an equal chance. And in this case, the courts of this world will have an opportunity. For example, sorry, I'm using his example. have an opportunity, for example, to be not only to be heard, but also to have an opportunity to lead. So if you are in that space, then you will realize that you're solving one problem, but you're not solving the whole problem. And the whole problem is that even the minority will have an opportunity and a chance to be electable. And that's why I was saying that if you think through the way our politicians and the elite think, then when they do their maths, if you're not among the big tribes, and then on the discussion table, they will not even discuss you. And even if you tried, it doesn't matter how good you are, it doesn't matter how progressive you are. If you don't have something to present on the table, which is how many votes, I mean, how much numbers you have in terms of tribe, then that just doesn't make sense.
All right, two more.
There's another narrative which is coming in with it.
Sorry?
Yes, I was saying that there's another narrative that is coming along, which is looking at the aspect of hustlers versus the haves, or hustlers versus the dynasties. You see, that discussion is the same discussion that is trying to galvanize a certain category of people against a certain category of people. And that's why if you look at the president's statement of saying, these two communities have been leading, why not another one? That's basically to counter the narrative of saying that someone is getting traction, some other people are getting traction in terms of looking at the numbers at the poor people. And so how do you counter that? You create the tribe card. And then that's why I was saying easily become two kind of arguments.
You make a point that makes me wonder. Anyway, we may not be having enough time to exhaust that because we've got two more pending matters. We've got the Musalia Mudavadi factor and we've got the upcoming elections in Uganda. Let's begin with the prior, and that is Musalia Mudavadi. Is he slowly being groomed as the compromise candidate that could hinder the deputy president's ambition of being the top man in 2022?
You know, Musalia Mudavadi people have made attempts before. People argue that he's a likable guy, he's less harmful, he's predictable, and so he's someone you can bank on. The technocrats and the systems have always thought, and that happened last time, although actually Uhuru Kenyatta would not have been president today if that plot would have happened. Because Musalia Mudavadi was preferred to Uhuru Kenyatta. And you see, if you think about the link between Musalia Mudavadi and the Moi family and the Kalenjin, you're more likely to sell Musalia Mudavadi nationally than another person. So competencies aside, because I am not sure, I can't make any judgment here because I've never interacted with him as a person. But competence aside, it's easier to sell Musalia Mudavadi than to sell another person, because it's easy to form the narrative of the 40 against 2 that I was telling you about. And if you're fronting Musalia, then even the 2 that we're talking about, you're also likely to have a few people who will be comfortable with that kind of candidate. So it's an easy sell in terms of, but you see, that sell then will have to come with a plan which is solid, which includes people like Raila Odinga, for example, shelving their ambitions and making their support towards Musalia. That is the easiest way it can run. Otherwise, if you don't do that, then the hustler narrative is, you need to find a different way of dealing with that. Otherwise, it's difficult to deal with it. But again, if you think about the way politics is running, the people who are thinking about scenarios and options need to think quickly. Otherwise, if by the end of this year their thinking will not have materialized, then whichever way you look at it, we will just be dealing with William Ruto, Raila Odinga, and the people that we know.
You say they need to think through very quickly, and also you say that it's not the first time Musalia is being fronted. either directly or indirectly. In 2013, he came way too close, but yet too far. How do we make sure that this time around nothing is different? Or better yet, what is different this time around that he could be having as a bargaining chip that will work to his advantage?
You see, Sam, like I told you, it's one of those things that is about shelving ambitions, and especially of the political elite. That is where the problem is. In fact, Amsalia candidature might not sell if you're to approach it from a Mwananchi perspective. And so why I said, assume that Musalia Mudavadi is not a lawyer, assume that Musalia Mudavadi is a Turkana. And look at the other tribes headed by the elite, and these then are the ones who are making the decision to say, look, building options to actually front Musalia Mudavadi, the way they did Kibaki Tosha. And the person here who will play probably the most pivotal role will be Raila Odinga. So that's what I'm saying, the thinking has to be fast, because if that was to succeed, then the narrative of the hustler agenda would only be dealt with at that point. And if that doesn't happen, if it doesn't happen within this year, then of course it will become too late in the day. Remember, it also needs not to look like a government project, because once that happens, then you end into the same hole, which will be that people will be saying, we do not like you as a government. So anything that you bring to us, we will not like. So you see, that then has to be a point where people need to think quickly, and these people need to think in such a way that they present this option way early enough so that people can make those decisions. But the political elite will play the role that is bigger than what the Mwananchi role will be.
And is this narrative that is being fronted by the likes of Ayub Savula really helping the cause for Musalia Mudavadi? They're saying that Deputy President should stand down, better yet, resign or being impeached. Is that kind of narrative going to help the cause to have Musalia Mudavadi as president or possible president in 2022?
That does not help. It only helps to make it worse. You know, the whole aspect of saying he should stand down or he should be impeached or whatever it is, then on what basis will you be making those propositions? Because you see, if you're saying we need to front Musalia Mudavadi, then you're saying we are providing alternative leadership. You're not saying that we are providing Musalia Mudavadi at the expense of William Ruto, or William Ruto has to exit the scene for Mudavadi to succeed. You see, if we go that route, then you will never front Musalia Mudavadi and succeed. And at this point in time, I think the midnight oil, like I said, should be around the political elite thinking through which options are they looking at. Are they looking at the William Ruto option, or are they looking at the Musalia Mudavadi option? Because if that's not the case, then the other options we are thinking about are Raila Odinga or his secretary and other options. So the imagination that you will bring Musalia by bringing down William Ruto, that just doesn't work.
It's not one versus the other. Very quickly, before we take a break at the top of the hour, let me appreciate the following people who are watching the show this morning. Gideon Ocharo, you're saying, watching the show from Tasia. Asante sana for that. We've got our very own regular who watches the show every morning. This is William Wamburi, who's saying good morning from Watamu, tuned in already. Thank you, KBC. Very informative and connecting everyone to the world, kickstarting every day in style. Asante sana and have a lovely day. We've got another one here, Boniface Boke, who's saying, I'm enjoying Good Morning Kenya from Sir R. Boda. I took it as you wrote it. Thank you so much for that. Let me take another one here. Oh, God. Okay. All right. Newsom, thank you. You're saying, according to Raila Odinga, It's our turn to eat has found a new meaning. I have deliberately skipped your tweet, Ben, but thank you otherwise, and all the more for watching the show this morning. So you can keep talking to us. We encourage your participation and involvement in this particular live show. It's Good Morning Kenya, the only way to kickstart your morning. And the hashtag is Good Morning Kenya at KBC Channel 1. Make sure that your voice counts, and it's hard on this platform. At around some seconds to the top of the hour, let's take a break. We will be back with Alex Manyasi to look into some of the emerging issues that we could expect from the upcoming elections in Uganda tomorrow. That coming up after these messages. Keep it. Good Morning Kenya.